go to open discussion. Please go.
Actually, I have two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, there was a period in the film that it showed another movie, short scenes from another movie. I want to know the meaning. I didn't get anything from that. And I have another question as well.
Yeah.
I think we can, make the film into two parts. First, before, she met the soldier. Before that, she was lonely. She was feeling, I think, near to death. But after that, it was completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was feeling much better. She could face her fears. And it was telling, I think the soldier was more like her lover than her real lover.
Right.
Yeah, I wanna say, I wanna ask, what the director wanted to tell,
Mm-hmm.
because the woman was very pretty, but I think she didn't find her real lover. If fear of death, I think made her to go search and find her true lover.
Yeah.
I think maybe it is the message.
Yeah. I'll talk about that first, which I think, there really is a kind of a split that happens when she goes to, it's when she goes to the park, and she's really kind of alone, not even around other people, and then she meets a soldier and it's very intimate. I don't know that the message is that she's looking for another lover exactly, but I think that there is an element of finding a deeper kind of love. So when you saw the scene earlier with her real lover, it's so melodramatic and the music is swelling. It's so silly. It's a really, really silly scene. It doesn't even make sense in the movie. Like, he just kind of appears out of nowhere and then leaves. Like, it's so bizarre. What she has with the soldier is much more real. And I think one of the reasons for that, besides the fact that the soldier clearly has a kind of a respect for her, is that at first she's quite dismissive of the soldier, and then when she understands where he's coming from and what's going on, suddenly she has more respect for him. And so that sort of mutual respect, they become on the same level. And then they can connect in kind of a real way. And I think that is more the message, not so much like finding a lover, that's kind of still trivial, but it's like finding what a real love between two human beings might look like. And even that sequence, it's like a 15-minute sequence roughly, a little bit longer. And it's happening in theory in real time, like there's the time markers in the movie, and yet by the end of it, it feels like they've been together for, days. That's the kind of connection. To the first point about the short film that's in the movie, I mean, look, you can see what's happening in the short film in terms of like the guy going after the girl and then the girl kind of getting killed, and there's all these themes that kind of come in. I think that in a way the bigger thing is that it's what the projectionist character describes. It's an intermission in the movie. The movie is already kind of light and fun and has all these different segments, but it's a way for the movie to really just take a complete break even from itself and just enjoy those trivialities in life. Again, it's Varda taking the trivial nature of the character very seriously. So it's like, even though everything on the surface is trivial, there's nothing wrong with that. There's still an importance in having that.
Do you have a follow-up question too? Okay, Nasser?
I think we watched a couple of great experience of filming and directing. Like we had this short kind of movie in the movie, the cinema, and then we have that scene when the actress starts singing, and then the background changes, and it's like she is singing on the stage, and then there was a scene that we saw kind of portrait of people not watching, sitting in front of the camera, maid and the lover and the songwriter, and then what was that again? And the documentary kind of filming people on the street. How fresh were these kind of experience in those days?
The filmmaking?
Yeah.
Oh, extremely fresh. So this would have been about 2 years after Breathless, and maybe 3 years after 400 Blows. But Breathless especially, with the jump cuts and all these techniques, really kind of wowed people. Of course, some of those came a little bit earlier, it's like the same way that Citizen Kane stole stuff. But
and voiceovers we have.
the voiceover too, yeah. So although used very differently from the way that Godard uses it, right? I mean, I wasn't around in 1962, obviously, to see it. I can, were you? But did you see it?
No.
I think even watching it now, it's because you pick up on it too. It feels sort of fresh even now.
Yeah.
Some of those techniques are very unusual. I think that one of the major differences between what Varda does, and actually what many of those left bank filmmakers were doing compared to some of the Cahiers de Cinema people, and especially compared to Godard, is that they were very interested in the way that the filmmaking could be used in a literary sense, and in some ways in a theatrical sense. Like I feel like in the American version would be theatrical, not literary. But some of those ideas, like, it's one shot where she's singing, and it kind of zooms into the black background, and you almost forget that it's actually just in the room, and then it pulls back out, and it feels quite revelatory. And that's the kind of thing that you might get in a piece of writing where it sets the stage, and then it zooms in to describe just what the character is going through. And that's something that you see sort of throughout this movie and her movies, and some of those other, Chris Marker as well, some of his movies, where they're using these literary devices and translating them into film, and then using them to illuminate the character. It always comes back to illuminating the character. Even the mixture of documentary with some of these theatrical elements, it's always going back to how the character is feeling in a given moment and what we should understand about the character's development, right? Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
I was just wondering when you said like at the end of the movie, the main character was quite happy because she's been through all of these things and she felt connected with all other people around herself. I actually thought at the end of the movie she became the selfish person again. I felt like that happiness, she didn't actually share it with the soldier. She was just happy because she was released of that fear.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I mean, I think that's actually a part of it. Obviously, she's suddenly told, oh, everything's fine, she's going to be happy in a selfish way. But I think that when she says, I am happy,
She says, I seem I'm happy or something. Seems I'm happy.
the translation here is a little bit off. There's a few moments actually, it's not quite accurate. There's a more recent version on DVD that has kind of better subtitles. But really kind of what, at the end, the way that I think it's meant to come off is a realization that she's come up to this point, and sort of the fear was not entirely necessary. And given the fact that she's there with the soldier, it kind of creates a safe space for her. Yeah, there's no question, of course, she would be happy to get the diagnosis, or to get the kind of change in diagnosis. But I think there's a little bit more to it.
Okay.
I can ask, can we generalize the idea that if you're the more close you are to death, the more, in depth your meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
because the soldiers actually they are highly close to death in
Yeah.
war, and the whole movie is about a girl going to die.
Yeah.
So can we generalize this idea that it's contradictory, but if you are close to death and you realize the meaning of death, you are going to realize the meaning of life,
Well,
which may be happiness for
Of
others.
course, what it does is it creates a change in perspective, right? That's the big difference with the character, and that's why I think you're a bit right that it's not like she's giving up on selfishness. It's not like she changes fundamentally as a person, but she understands, she kind of gains a perspective that's a bit more outside of herself. And of course, the specter of death is what brings that along. And that's probably, I haven't been close to death, but I would imagine that that's true for a lot of people. The mixture of fear, but also kind of reevaluating the things that are important, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have Sad, and then I'll go to you.
As you explained about the mirror, what was the purpose of using sunglasses on the movie?
The sunglasses, it's used, I think, in just the one scene, right? Twice?
All the time in the bar or in the restaurant that
Right.
she were.
Yeah.
And when she went with her friend to the movie,
Oh, right, yeah.
they
yeah.
watched the movie with glasses, and they
That's
had
right.
some dialogues about the sunglasses that it makes, for example, everything dark,
Right.
and like that.
You know what? I forgot about about that one, so I'm not entirely sure to say. I know that the scene later, there's a feeling like she's hiding, even though people aren't recognizing her. And she comments later that she was walking around, she even played her music and nobody noticed. But even still, she feels like everybody's looking at her. So she feels the need to hide, right? So she's walking, she puts on the sunglasses, and then she walks down the street, and you see all the people kind of staring at her, and she's shifting away, and she has the sunglasses to block her eyes, right? To kind of keep out of view of everybody. I think that's sort of what's going on.
Can we say, for example, all the people look at her, but he never look. So probably she wear the glasses to look for other people too.
Maybe.
This is a way that she used. But in the movie that they watched, it was totally different because
Right.
they talk different than you said that before. But
Right, right.
That's fine for them.
Right, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I would probably agree with that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know your name, sorry.
I can say, John. John.
John.
Okay, my question is about the director.
Yeah.
Does she have a history of making political films or statements in her films that deal with politics of the issue of the day?
She herself is noteworthy as being quite political. The filmmakers that she worked with in general were very political. Those left bank filmmakers were like they were even more left wing than the NaMaNa Cinema guys. Godard went kind of crazy later, but her, so that's her herself. Her movies are a little bit different from that, in that I think, from what I've seen at least, they're quite infused with politics, but the politics isn't the subject, right? So, for example, her first movie, La Pointe Courte, is about this couple where the husband is from this small sort of coastal village, and his wife comes to see him, and there's kind of issues she's thinking of separating. And much of the movie is these sort of conversations between the two that are shot in a lot of ways like a Bergman movie, and they're having these sort of philosophical conversations about the nature of love and all of that. And really the subject of the movie is the way that these characters find a new outlook on the way that their relationship works. But in the meantime, like the other half of the movie, it keeps cutting to all these little sort of stories that are happening in that village that are showing the class disparities and showing the way that the government has inspectors coming in messing with the shellfish fishermen, and again, it's not like the straight subject of the movie, but it plays a part, and I think that this is the same, right? So you see these it's effectively a commentary on the Algerian War, but always to the character.
And what was happening in France at the time,
Yeah.
after the war, and also the split internally in France between the people who collaborated with the Nazis and
Right.
The resistance movement and the people that backed that. To me, she represents basically France,
Mhm.
as opposed to an individual. Like, the woman is France.
Like Cléo.
With an ill,
Yeah.
sorry?
Like Cléo, the character, yeah.
That she's France, that
Mhm.
she's a country with an ailment, a woman with an ailment, a country with a suffering from a serious disease. Don't know what it is,
Right.
but there's something eating away at it from the inside.
Right.
Algeria was a very hot topic at the time. It was like their version of Vietnam,
Mhm.
and it really, that also split the country. You know, people being for and against it. With colonialism, but it was very vicious war.
Right.
There's a lot of French people, a lot of French soldiers lost their lives in a very, brutal battles.
Mhm.
So to me, like, it's not really a story about the woman per se, but like, there's so many things that happen in her life, like in that 2 hours, that are really a reflection of a statement of what's going on in society in general.
Right.
In France.
Well, I think, there's, you're not wrong. And I think that Varda, there's another movie I watched of hers that's from much later, from 1985, called Vagabond, about this young woman who's just like homeless and hopping from place to place and car to car. And that one is also very much about these kind of radical politics, and very much a comment on the politics at the time. I think that to say that one thing has more importance than another, like to think of this movie only as an allegory for France and Algeria, that's probably going a bit too far. But I wouldn't doubt for one second that she had those things in mind when she was crafting kind of the structure of the story. Yeah.
Okay, so 8:35. Okay, last question.
What's your interpretation of that when the soldier came and then he talked about nakedness and then about love, death, and then it was short, like
Mhm.
short.
It's not the only conversation about nakedness,
Yeah,
right?
but-
Because
but
she has
it
one
was-
with the friend earlier
No,
as
but
well.
soldier, I want to know the meaning of like that part that soldier was talking about. That if you want to like understand love or you want to understand death.
I think that I think it actually plays off of the earlier conversation about nakedness, which is that she talks about how she has a bit of a fear of nudity, and the model says, oh, whatever, who cares, plus I get paid. Like, it's a very easy transactional thing for that model, whereas for her, it's not. Like, she feels vulnerable. And I think what the soldier is kind of pointing out is that, in a sort of cliche way, like the vulnerability, that's what it is to be human, right? There's no difference facing birth, death, any of those things in life. At the end of the day, we're all naked in front of it, right? And that's, I think, kind of what he's talking about it more in a metaphorical way, the idea of nakedness.
Okay. So our open discussions, basically anybody who's willing to bring a new subject will have 2 minutes to talk about that subject, and then right after that we'll get to the responses. Probably those of you who want to reply to it, you'll have 30 seconds to respond. But if you're basically broaching a new subject, you'll need 2 minutes. And I'll just take it from right here. Sirius.